everyone, today I'm going to show you some cool stuff that you can do with Unity Editor begin with 2021.3. So let's begin. So there's two major concepts now with Unity Editor side. There's overlay and there's editor tool. This here is the overlay, and you can drag it and you can do all kind of sort of things. You can do horizontal or vertical. Let's do horizontal. So we get this toolbar, or we can do panel, which is how it should looks if you want to. Then we can do vertical as well, and we can collapse if we want to, and we can click on this button to extend or preview all buttons as well. And we can also hide this. So let's do expand and hide. So now it's hidden. To access all the overlays, you can use space, and over here you have overlays. So tools is now visible, and now is invisible. So this is a great way to do all these kind of things, and you can basically get rid of all the overlays that you want. So this is very handy if you want to use this. I don't know how to reset, revert all, no. I think default, there we go. So there we go, everything is working great. So let's actually create our custom overlay. So let's do that. So we want to do this in the editor side, so we can create a folder. I'm gonna create a folder over here called editor. Then let's say our custom overlay. Let's say we want to have an overlay for controlling our environment. Let's say the lighting and the sun and all that kind of stuff, and the snow. So let's do that. So let's say an environment overlay, and let's open this up in Visual Studio. Once it's open, we can change from mono behavior to overlay. We need to have the namespace as well, so Unity Editor .overlays, and this has an abstraction method, so let's use that. And this uses a visual element. If you're not familiar with a visual element, it's basically a little bit similar to UI or GUI in Unity, except it's much better in terms of styling, and it's like CSS. If you ever worked with HTML and or done websites, it's basically a Unity version of that. So it's very similar to UI, which you can create basically UI through the code, but you can also do side sheets similar to CSS. So I think visual element is the new way to do UI. It's a little bit complicated because this only is a callback once. So if you want to have repeated callbacks, you need to do some trickery, which is a little bit complicated, but it's not that hard. So let's create our visual element. So we're gonna do root new visual element like so, and we're gonna return root. So we have created an overlay. Obviously it's just an empty container, so let's create a label. So let's say label, let's say title label, and create a new label, and this should have the text of saying environment manager, something like that. And we need to add this into our root container. It's like so. So now we have created our overlay. Let's go back to our Unity and let's check. So if I press space, you can see we have no actual overlay. We don't have our custom overlay. This is because we need to use an attribute. So let's use overlay attribute like so. And this takes in a couple of things, where to instantiate it from, or like be used in basically. So we can do type of scene view. So this is going to be in the scene view editor, where to instantiate it from. And then we need to have our display's name. So let's say environment manager, spell it wrong. Environment manager, there we go. Now we have displacement. We also have a parameter for ID. ID is very important if you want to have consistency with the overlay. So let's actually create that. So we're gonna create a private const string called environment, and let's just call id overlay overlay like so. Let's do environment overlay like so, and we're just gonna pass in this, so id like so, and we can come like so. Now if we go back to Unity editor and check out our overlays, we can actually see now we have environment manager, and we can also drag it from a specific point. You can see it's very it's horizontal layout, and we can also snap it like so. We can see it doesn't have an icon. This has an icon and this has an icon. How do we use an icon? Well, there's actually an attribute for using an icon. Now it's a little bit weird for me to basically tell you how it works. So basically it searches for a texture 2D, I'm assuming, from a specific path, and the path is relative to your project. So it's a little bit complicated to understand, so it doesn't use resource.load, and I don't think it's using other ways. But if you just copy the path from your texture and just paste it in as a string, it should work. So let's actually do that. Now a great website to use custom icons is icons.8. If you never use this, I think this is free commercial icons website that you can use. So let's say we want environment, so let's say sun. It's not very high detail. You can obviously get high detail, but you have to purchase some icons. For example, I think 24 pixel is free. I don't know if no. Okay, so every sizes are free, but let's say this one. Oh, it seems that everyone is free over here. So if I download this, yeah, cool. So we have a sun icon. Let's import that in Unity editor. So let's do textures. Let's do icons inside of that, and let's import that. So like so, and we're gonna change the name to just sun like so, and we're gonna change this to texture 2D and remove the transparency. I think it will do that automatically, which is great. So let's copy the path. So we right click and just copy the path like so, and we paste the path as a string like so. So once we have copied the path, we can see now that the icon is showing. So we can also dock in between over here in the hotbar or the toolbar, or whatever you want to call them. So this is a great way to use icons and very more explicitly showing how to use them. Now let's expand this, and we can see the label and all that kind of stuff. And there we go, we got our custom feature. Now obviously it doesn't do anything because we haven't given a control. So let's actually do that. So let's say we want to set the time of day, and let's say we want to have an int between no, let's say it should be a float between 0 and 24, because I live in Sweden and we use 24 hours. So we could do var time field new slider. And over here we have the constructor. So let's say start, it should be 0, and the end, it should be 24. And here we have direction, which is horizontal, and we have the page size, size. There we go. And we have the label as the start if we want to specify. So let's do that. So label, let's say time of day, like so. There we go, we have created our time field. Let's add this to our room, so like so. And now we can see the slider in our overlay. And there we go, we have a slider. Obviously it should be expanded more, so we could do either expand from the style or from the UI itself. So what we could do is root style, style, there we go, width, and we can set this. So let's set this to obviously this needs a style length. let's actually do a side length, and this requires a what is it, a length. There we go. So let's just do new. In C# 8 or 9 you can do new without specifying, but apparently you can't do over here. So let's do length like so, and we need the value, and we can specify what type unit is. So let's do 150, and we can specify as pixel. There we go. Obviously you can see it didn't do much because it's actually shrink. So let's do 500, and let's do that. And also let's do time fill. Let's set the style to be flex growth to 1. So this basically means it's gonna grow itself to the width. So basically stretch to the width like so. And now we can see we have much better control of the time. Obviously the width is incredibly large, so we can decrease that by, let's say, 300. There we go, we got a overlay that's working. Let's also show the value behind, underneath. So let's do var label time label. We just create a new label. We're gonna create we're gonna add this to the root time label, and we're gonna add the text. The text should be like this, string interpolation, and we're gonna have the time field value over here, and we can specify. So this is gonna give us a float, so we want the time span. So I'm gonna create a string get time as string, and we're gonna have a time span, and we're gonna use system. I just don't want to import that. I'm just gonna do this quickly. And then there we go. I created a method that will basically translate float time, let's say seconds, and we're gonna get that from time span. So we are converting float into a time span, and this will get us hours and minutes, and using a string format to basically get a formatted string based on those values. And we're simply applying this into our time label, and also set the default value to be 12. So we are starting at 12 midday. You can see the value of our time label is 0, and if I change, nothing happens. This is because we don't get an update. Now you could do two ways. So what we could do is do root.schedule.execute, and we need to pass in a event. So let's create a temporary event. Then we can do specify every, and here we can specify the time in milliseconds. So let's say 100 milliseconds, so 0.1 second. So this is gonna call this event. Now we don't have anything in this event, so let's actually just do this over here. Now to show you, let's increase this to 1 second as an update interval, because this is not a great way to use it. Yes, you can do a basically an update method for visual elements, but it's not the best way. I don't know why it's not updating. It should update. Value. Oh, it might not register. Wait a second. So I basically understand why it didn't work, because we're using from second. I changed it from hours because we are using hours, not second. Therefore, it shouldn't work now. So if we try this again, it should update now 1 second. So you can see the time is changing perfectly, but you can see it's updating even though we are not changing the value. So this can create a performance hit. Obviously we're doing in 1 second, so it doesn't take that much performance, but let's say we're doing 1 millisecond. Now that's going to be a very performance benefit, take a very much performance. So a better way to do this is actually register a callback for our time field when we are changing it. So let's do that. So let's do over here, register. We have a callback and we can create a custom callback or a basically UI visual element callback. But we have a callback for our slider, which is register value change callback. So let's do that and we can create a callback. So let's do temporary event like so. Now in the parameter, the context parameter, we can see the new value and we can also see the previous value that we have changed. So let's actually, instead of doing update every single seconds or time milliseconds, let's update the value when we change the actual value. So over here, instead of doing like so, we can do context and we can use new value. Now the problem is that we are registering this callback before we have created the label. So let's actually do this after we have created the label. Now I just want to minimize this code, so I'm just going to copy this and remove the curly brackets and just replace the code like so. I think this is a much better way to write it, or cleaner at least. So let's get back to our overlay and we can see we can change the value and the value is changing perfectly. So the labels are only changing when the value is changing. So this is a great way to show. And I really love this. Yeah, I think this is a great way to control the time. Obviously, we are not controlling the time in our world, but we can do in this registry value callback. We could also do let's just expand this. Sometimes this Visual Studio won't appear like so, like so. There we go. And we can do registry callback event for environment manager, something like that. I don't know. So you can control the sun if you want to. Obviously, I don't want to do this right now because this is going to take time. But you can see that always basically helps you to do that. Okay, let's say we want to create a button like this toolbar. So we have this view tool, move tool, rotate tool, and all these kind of tools. Let's say we want to have this on our overlay as well. So in order to do that, we want to change from overlay to toolbar overlay. And this will give us access to add some basically tools on our overlay. After we implemented the class, we also want to create a constructor. Now in the base constructor, we want to add these different parameters in order to create our toolbar, our tools. So we want to go back to NPC2 and over here we want to create our tool. So in order to do that, we do simply by doing editor tool bar button. So basically we're creating a toolbar button. After we've done that, we also want to have an attribute, and this is going to be into editor toolbar element. There we go. And over here we need an ID. So our overlay requires also an ID in order to add the editor toolbar button to our overlay. So we need to expose the IDs. So we're going to do public const string and we're going to do npc. Let's call this ID. So we're going to do npc tool like so. And over here we do ID. So we need to specify a target window, and this is basically registering callbacks and all that kind of stuff. So simply just type in scene view like so, and we also need to import the library as well like so. Now in our environment overlay, we can do the npc2 .id. Basically now we should have our tool. So firstly, we can see the panel is gone because now we implementing the editor toolbar overlay. So we get new feature. We get three new feature. We get this panel view, which is our previous overlay view, and we get horizontal view and vertical view. This is the same thing as this toolbar, so we can do horizontal, vertical, or the panel view. So let's do vertical for this. Now we can see we have a button. Obviously this button doesn't have any icons, nor a label, nor a hint, or anything that you can do with this. So basically what we're gonna do is create our button. So we can do a constructor we're gonna create a constructor that's gonna basically create our visual element. So we have text, and let's say for example create NPC. Then we're gonna have an icon. Now I'm gonna copy icon from my project. So I'm just gonna do cross. I'm gonna do PlayStation 4 cross. Copy this path. So we're gonna do asset database. So load asset path. I'm gonna add texture 2D. And we can simply just paste in the path. So that's a path, and there we go. So now we have the icon. Let's do toolbar. So sorry, tooltip, and we can say instantiating NPC. Instantiate NPC. Obviously spelled that wrong as well. So there we go. From our script, something like that. Then we can also do register a callback. So on clicked, and we can do something else. Create NPC, and we can just do a debug the log saying hello world, for example, or we created NPC. You create an and there we go. And there we go. Everything should be working fine. So we can see the cross is there, and when we click it, we can see you created an NPC, and there we go. So we got a button, and obviously we can do horizontal, and we can do panel view to get the original overlay. So basically there we go. So now you have two features that you can use. You can use Unity editor button. Sorry. Oh, this is very complicated to say fast. Editor toolbar button. There we go. That you can implement and add this to the toolbar overlay, or you can just use overlay if you don't want to have any toolbar button, basically. This was a little bit complicated to add in Unity because it's very new and it's not very, it has documentation and it has a forum that people talks about it, but it's not very common because it was just released officially to the 2021.3 version. So beyond that, you can use this tool, and it's very helpful to create, for example, your custom asset or your custom tool to basically have an overview of you using it. Now the problem is when I use it is that if I switch to game view, the tools doesn't exist. And yes, that could be a beneficial if you don't want to have the tools in the game view, but ultimately let's say we have a panel view and we want to change the time of view, time of day. Let's say we play the play inside Unity like so, and we want to change this. Now we need to switch over to scene view and yada yada yada. We could split like so, but I feel like it would be nice to have so an overlay sort of inside the game view. I don't know if that is something Unity is considering, but it would be nice. But yeah, let me know if this was complicated. If you have any problems and you want me to explain a little bit better and more in detail and give you more links, then just give me a comment about it and I will check it out when I can. But for now, yeah, thank you for watching. I will upload soon. I have a lot of things to talk about and a lot of things to show. I'm working on a car physics tool, which is going to be open source, free public asset to Unity, and I feel like it's going to be amazing. It's a little bit complicated because I don't know how to design and approach different topics, nor is going to take a lot of time because it's a little bit complicated to understand. And right now the feeling I get is not very finished. It's a little bit clumsy, so I want to polish before I showcase anything. Now, if you are interested about me making this tool to Unity, which is going to be a vehicle simulation tool, then highly check out my Instagram page, and you can see this highlight, which is called Drifter Tool. And you can see, obviously need an account, but basically you can see behind some scenes which I'm working on this tool. It's been almost like 2 months sort of right now I've been working on it, and I had this idea for quite a while. I think like 5 years ago I had this idea. Obviously 3 years ago I realized it's very complicated topic, and I didn't have much motivation. Now 2 years later I found my motivation, and I finally making this tool how I want it, and I have a lot of resources, and I'm looking online and researching as hell to get more information, because the information I got right now isn't enough to make this tool complete yet, but hopefully it will be awesome and fun. But yeah, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye everyone.